Welcome back to Tipton Bros. Today, we'll be discussing the Swedish STRV-74, a Scandinavian tank that is often overshadowed by its Cold War counterparts. Now, let's get into it. The dust of the Second World War was well settled, and a new age of armored vehicles had dawned. In a period of heightened nuclear tension, countries compensated by fielding tanks with bolstered armor and firepower. Sweden, however, was behind the curve, still relying upon the then terribly antiquated Stridsvagn 42, a medium tank equipped with an impotent 75mm main gun, lackluster armor, and poor mobility. Even by interwar standards, the STRV-42 was just okay. Jump forward to 1952, and the tank is an absolute liability. Developing a domestic armored vehicle from scratch was near impossible given the time frame, and would only put the Nordic nation in a deeper technological hole. To keep pace with the competition, buying foreign was the short-term solution. The French AMX-13 was a relatively light, efficient, and inexpensive modern tank, which caught the Swedes' attention. Testing commenced at Huevde training grounds, north of Gothenburg, that April. Despite promising results, General Nils Swedlund pulled the plug, citing inadequate protection among several other gripes. Swedish officials now gazed westward across the North Sea, to the UK. The freshly minted Mark III British Centurion was a prime candidate. Content with its capabilities, 80 units were purchased, entering service under the designation of STRV-81. While this was a start, pricey imported tanks could not quench the needs of the Swedish army, and thus the idea of upgunning the STRV-42 was revived. Keeping the original chassis, engineers at AB Landsverk were entrusted to design an entirely new turret, constrained by the small turret ring of the STRV-42 and a narrow platform which limited overall weight. The parameters were less than ideal. Borrowing numerous components from the Centurion Mark III to cut time and expense, Swedish ingenuity prevailed, yielding a one-of-a-kind outcome: the Stridsvagn 74, costing roughly 360,000 kroner. Conversely, an off-the-line Centurion Mark III ran the Swedes 3 times that amount, making the decision quite easy. Its most prominent feature was the oblong and space-age turret, as what could not fit crosswise was made to fit lengthwise. In the bustle sat the auxiliary power unit, a Volkswagen motor which provided electricity for ventilation and heating. Towards the muzzle sat a pronounced slope mantlet, which shields a large portion of the frontal surface area. The turret had a mere 20mm or 2 cm of armor to lessen the load on the already burdened suspension, so an oversized mantlet was selected to offset the difference. This is what creates a sort of stretched teardrop shape. Before moving into specifics, I'd like to mention a comparison between the STRV-74 and the German Tiger II. Whether this was intentional or mere coincidence on the part of Swedish designers, I don't know, but the turret profiles are remarkably similar in my opinion. Here are a few side-by-side images. Curious enough, the armor on the chassis remained largely unchanged, with 55mm on the front vertical faces and 3mm on the glacis. The only notable contrast being the addition of 2 hefty blast plates on the forward slope in the event of a nuclear explosion. These were intended to divert energy or chemical contaminants out and away from the exhaust ports and subsequent crew compartment. Adjusted steering, hydraulic shock absorbers, and widened tracks for weight distribution were necessary to account for the added 3.5 imperial tons. Likewise, the main armament was augmented with the Model 1929 7.5cm Bofors, a cannon which fired the 75 by 604mm rimmed cartridge, comparable to the German 7.5cm KWK-42 deployed in the Panther. The pair of Scania Vabis Type 603 gasoline engines were upgraded to the direct injection Type 607, putting out approximately 170 horsepower each. This resulted in a top speed of 28 miles per hour. The transmission was a 4-gear hydro-mechanical system, with gears 1 and 3 being hydraulic, 2 and 4 being mechanical. The secondary armament consisted of 2 KSP M39 machine guns, chambered in 8mm, and later 7.62 by 51 NATO, mounted on the exterior of the tank, outside the commander's cupola, and the coaxial counterpart in the turret. The crew of 4 men were afforded decent, albeit tight working quarters. Remarkably, Due to the sheer height of the turret, the STRV-74 recorded a staggering gun depression of -15 degrees, permitting hull-down concealed fire. Further striking elements include a set of 3 radios alongside ample visibility. Several periscopes and binoculars are littered throughout the crew compartment, which are taken directly off the Mark III Centurion. British parts were a staple of the STRV-74, such as the power traverse, smoke dischargers, and gunner's quadrant, among others. Officially, the armored vehicle is labeled as a light tank, although it would fall more comfortably into the medium category. Manufacture seemed to be shared between Hagelands and Sonar and AB Landsverk. How the workload was divided, I am unsure. 225 total production examples were completed between 1958 and 1960. The career of the Stridsvagn 74 was uneventful, spending the better part of 2 decades in exercises with 4 armored brigades. By 1981, the STRV-74 was relegated to an infantry support role, and in 1984 was officially retired, replaced by the IKV-91. A large quantity of STRV-74 turrets were recycled and installed along concrete coastal fortifications until the late 90s. I hope you've enjoyed today's brief overview of the Swedish STRV-74. We are a small channel, so a like is greatly appreciated, and recommendations are always welcome. Until next time, on Tipton Bros.